Hey there, everybody. This is John with Infinite Lives. Welcome to our new inaugural show of DLC, downloadable content. I am joined, of course, by my co-host, Dan.
I'm not wearing any pants.
That's a lie. You're totally wearing pants.
They'll never know.
Okay, well, that's probably true. This is the show where we're going to talk about what we've played this week and perhaps some other varied topics. We're not sure yet. This is all new to us. So, Dan, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Good. So we reviewed some games this week, or I should say
It's not a review.
No, we looked at some games this past week, and we were going to talk about them today.
Yeah.
I took a look at a couple different games. First off, we did Gravity Ghost, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You guys should play it. Dan, then you took a look at a game called...
The Wasteland.
Yes.
Not Wasteland.
No,
The Wasteland. Three different words.
There's a big The Wasteland. 3 different words. And then I finally took a look at Darkest Dungeon, which is a game that we actually looked at PAX a while back.
Yep.
All right, so first off, we're going to take a look at Gravity Ghost. That's a nice little indie game that I picked up on a kind of a lark just after reading a couple things online. And the cool thing about it is you get a free copy for a friend. So I have a friend who I gave a copy to who has not played it yet. So why don't we take a look at the video? Platformers nowadays are mostly striving towards pixel-perfect jumps and speedruns, but it's good to see that there are developers still out there making games for those of us whose Twitch skills may have degraded over the years, but who still want to enjoy a platformer once in a while. I'm happy to tell you that there is hope for all of us in Gravity Ghost, a superb atmospheric platformer from Ivy Games. The game offers a few short cutscenes to introduce you to your character, a young girl named Iona, who appears to awaken on a strange planet with no memory of how she actually got there. Her only companion on this solitary planet is a fox, who disappears shortly after and serves as the motivation for our heroine to embark on her quest.
Where are you going?
I've seen some comparisons to Super Mario Galaxy, which are definitely easy to make. You're basically platforming your way through each level, trying to get a star and get to the exit. And the stars are what opens new worlds in the game, each of which is capped off with a boss level. While this is an easily encapsulated description of the gameplay, it's the subtleties that set this game apart from so many others. Your character is actually manipulated by the gravity of the planets in each level, some larger than others, and the navigation really depends early on about building momentum and achieving an orbit that will put you in the path of the star and later the exit door. In addition to collecting the star in each level, some contain animal spirits that you have to guide back to their resting place. Usually these resting places are in a level that you've already completed. Once the spirit is laid to rest, you're treated to another snippet of backstory, which slowly reveals how young Iona ended up in her weird, strange galaxy. What the game does is begin to layer different ways to manipulate both yourself and the planets themselves to make this much more interesting and satisfying overall, while never making it seem too easy. The first ability Iona obtains is to make her mass heavier, which allows her to plummet towards a planet at much greater velocity, and even destroy some planets which are made of glass. From there, the abilities get even more varied, eventually resulting in such things as the ability to become immaterial and plaster planets entirely. In addition to these abilities, Iona collects elemental abilities that are tied to her hair length, such as changing a planet from solid earth into water, or changing a glass planet into a fiery ball that launches you much higher when you jump off the planet due to the heat making you rise. Even with all of these gameplay tweaks, none of the levels ever felt too difficult, save for a couple of tricky stages where you have to hit a series of switches within a limited amount of time and in a specific order. Even with these difficult stages, there's actually no way to fail any level. You can take as long as you like to float in space and figure out the best way to complete it. And even if you come across a stage where the solution is eluding you, happened to me once in the entirety of the game, you can actually jump right back out to the map and move on to another stage. I've spent a lot of time talking about the gameplay, but one of the things that really captured my imagination on this title was the music. Not surprising, since the composer on the game is the same person who did FTL, which is also another spacefaring atmospheric style game. every time Iona was going through the cosmos and trying to navigate the planets, I sometimes found myself sitting in a level longer than I needed to just so I could hear a particular portion of the song. It's really enriching, and I recommend anyone who's going to pick up the game to pick up the soundtrack as well. In the end, the game takes about 3 to 4 hours to complete, and this was actually with me completing every single level, including the one I skipped in the first attempt, and finding all of the animal spirits. Interestingly enough, after completing the game, I took a look at the achievements, and there's some weird, interesting challenges in there, such as going through the entire game without returning a single animal spirit to its home, or grabbing all of the abilities you get at each of the end of the boss levels and keeping them with you as well. Which I think would become kind of a mess on the screen if you saw that many things trailing you all at once. Overall, anyone who is a fan of an extremely joyful experience owes it to themselves to play this game and pass it along to a friend. Since every copy that you purchase comes with an additional copy that you can gift to someone else, which I think is pretty amazing.
There you are.
And it's a perfect way to spread the word about a good game that you're interested in. So instead of just talking about it, you can give it to that friend who, like, you need to play this. And then hopefully they'll buy it and pass it along to somebody else. In closing, this is John from the Infinite Lives podcast, and I'll see you in the starry skies, as long as you've got some ham. So that was Gravity Ghost, everybody. Dan?
So how long was Gravity Ghost?
About 4 hours. I want to say that if I really wanted to get like every single last achievement, I could probably play through it for another couple. I would probably have to do another complete playthrough on it.
Yeah.
Because as I was talking about in my video, there's like a whole bunch of achievements that are super weird, like getting all the animal spirits and not returning any of them.
So you think that's a pretty good play value to the game?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get all the achievements, and I mean, just floating around in space with the music playing is very soothing. There's something very soothing about that. So yeah.
So it's a game you'd go back to? I
would probably go back to it at least one more time, yeah. Play through it again. The voice acting is really good. It's just overall a really solid title.
So how much is the game, and where can somebody get it?
So the game's $15 on Steam. That's the only place that's being sold right now. Or I should say PC is the only platform you can get it on right now. I'm sure you can find it on other platforms aside from Steam. But the good thing about it is, like I said in the video, you get a free copy for a friend. So you're basically getting 2 copies for $15.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think that's a pretty good value proposition?
Yeah, totally worth the price. Because the gameplay, the uniqueness to it, and the music was fantastic. I kind of wish I just had the soundtrack for it. I probably should have bought that. I think that was an option on Steam.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. And of course, like I said, you get a free copy when you buy it. So basically, you play it, you go, I like this. I'm going to give it to my buddy. Here, you play this now.
Yeah, that's a pretty unique,
if your buddy
unique
plays
way
it.
to do it. I am going to play it. Just don't worry.
Sure.
Don't worry.
I know. It's all good.
So while you were playing that game, was there any kind of like faults or weaknesses in the game that you kind of, because your video seemed pretty positive on it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I only had one real problem, one level that really stumped me, and that was a bunch of series of switches that you saw in there that you have to hit in a very specific order. I think I spent a good like 6 or 7 minutes the first time on it, just sitting there like racking my brain. And then I just like, no, I'm gonna take a break and jumped right back out to the main map and came back to it later.
Yeah, a challenge isn't a bad thing.
No, and it was just that was the only minute thing I had, and I was able to solve it the next time I jumped into the level. It was just really solid.
All right, well, we'll turn over to my game that I played. It's called The Wasteland.
The Wasteland.
The Wasteland.
Welcome to it.
Welcome to the Wasteland.
The Wasteland. It's an action platformer. It's kind of a Metroidvania-style game, and it's inspired by a T.S. Eliot poem that's also called The Wasteland. I think that's pretty unique. A video game inspired by a poem. The setup is that you play King Xiron III, ruler of all the lands. He's on a hunting expedition, and it seems some of his soldiers like to run around the camp frantically. Then he meets a mysterious god of the forest and decides to reenact Princess Mononoke. everything sucks afterwards, all the king's men are killed, everything is on fire, and you meet a mysterious floating Shaolin monk. You realize that the world has gone to hell, and all the creatures hate you. I mean, all the creatures. Hate. All of them. So the Wasteland is Metroidvania in the sense that you are going from area to area in a non-linear fashion. You need to find new weapons and new upgrades in order to progress through the different areas. There is no real leveling up, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of currency, but the backgrounds and towns remind you of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. But the platforming really feels solid, especially after finding the double jump boots. The setting feels unique, the enemies are strange. Actually, I'm not exactly sure if I like the enemies so far, but the first boss encounter is pretty awesome, even though it looks suspiciously like big worms from another Miyazaki film. You also get a secondary weapon. The first one you find is a regular bow and arrow. Coupled with the double jump, you can pull off some pretty cool shots. Combat does take some getting used to. Of all the retro elements of the Wasteland, this is where it really feels like an old NES action game. It's not necessarily the tightest or best combat I've ever played, but after about 30 minutes, it feels like a game I played 25 years ago. Probably the weakest aspect is the music and sound. It isn't really terrible, but it's more that the music loops over and over and over and over again. Sound effects are alright, but nothing classic. Getting to a new area gets you a new song, so there's that. All in all, I have enjoyed what I played of The Wasteland. Lots of other games try to be retro, but this one really has it in spades. It captures all that is good and bad of a Castlevania-inspired action game.
So that was The Wasteland. What do you think, John?
It looks like a retro-inspired action game. It's Castlevania. How is it? Does it really play like a Castlevania game?
Yeah, the controls kind of get wonky and it kind of sticks. It's really stiff. That's the thing. It's
so like I remember in Castlevania, you would jump through the air and you would have no real control at that point. So once you jump in a direction, you're pretty much going in that direction.
No, you have control, like Mario-esque control of where you're going, Metroid, that kind of control. Especially when you get the double jump, like it feels much better. Okay. But like the combat and like the flying creatures, you saw in the video, there's like a ton of flying creatures.
Yeah, and it's weird looking at the hitboxes on some of those guys too. Like it wouldn't seem like you would hit those guys, but you're hitting them, and then you get a bow apparently. Yeah, kind of like what I said in the video. It's not so much. I don't know if it's something that was on purpose to be as retro as it is in those aspects, but it definitely has that same feel. How much is that game?
It is right now $10 on Steam.
Okay, is that the $10, Dan?
I would be very hard pressed to recommend that game to everybody openly. Okay. You would have to have a very certain affinity to those kinds of games.
So if I love Simon's Quest,
you do?
I love Simon's Quest.
Okay.
Would I like this game?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. You turn down the volume a little bit and you'd be all right. Put Spotify or something on the background and
you know what I'll do? I'll play the Simon's Quest music underneath that game.
That's all right. That's a pretty good suggestion.
So I looked at one other game this week, and that game is called Darkest Dungeon. We actually looked at this back at PAX last year. Yeah. The game is now out, so I've been playing quite a bit of it, and I've made a video on it. So why don't we take a look at it? After playing the game last year at PAX Prime, I was fairly certain I would be both infuriated and elated once I was able to sit down for an extended period of time and really get a sense of what Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook Studios was all about. Hi, this is John from the Live Podcast.
Suggestion through the corrupted
in the simplest sense, the game has you taking a party of 4 heroes on a dungeon crawl and engaging in turn-based combat. The goal of these adventures, of course, is gathering treasure and experience to better improve their adventuring success in order to tackle more difficult dungeons. Of course, as with any game, it's the subtle and not so subtle systems added which really make this game both infuriating and satisfying all at the same time. The story begins with you cast as an heir of a quickly deteriorating hamlet/manor and returning after receiving a disturbing letter from the previous owner who begs you to come and claim your birthright, and also to bring order to the land which has descended into chaos. Once you arrive in town, it's readily apparent that the land has indeed fallen into darkness, and the only salvation is to recruit a stalwart band of adventurers to combat the evil that has taken root. The heroes at your disposal are a ragtag band of rogues, such as the Highwaymen and Jester, warriors, like the Crusaders and Hellions, and mystics, the Vestals and Occultists, and even a few that I couldn't quite figure out at first, such as the Plague Doctor and the Leper. Each of the heroes definitely has a primary role in the party, but one of the most intriguing things about the game, and a callback to any old-school D&D player, is that the position in the party actually matters while adventuring. The position of your characters determines the powers that are available during their turn, and so you have to be very deliberate about party order before you set out. Of course, before you're even able to set out on your quest, you actually need to recruit those heroes who randomly appear at your wagon seeking adventure, and are more than willing to venture into the darkness for promises of fame, fortune, and glory. In addition to the stalwart band, you must also purchase provisions such as food, bandages, and even torches to light the dungeon. That last one is particularly crucial to your dungeon crawl, as the darker the dungeon, the more prone your characters are to being ambushed or stumbling upon traps. The light also plays a crucial role in the game's most unique feature, which is stress. You see, dungeon crawling can be a lucrative profession, but it doesn't come without a cost. And in this case, that cost is that your adventurers get stress from many different types of sources.
Quickly the tide turns.
The damage they take from enemies and traps, as well as just being in the dungeon for an extended period, can cause stress, and once a particular character's stress level is maxed out, they are then forced to test their resolve. If a hero conquers their stress, they are rewarded with a boost to their effectiveness, but in most cases they succumb to the stress and develop an affliction, which ranges from simple stat debuffs to more complicated ailments such as the inability to respond to your commands, and even some which affect how they can be assisted once the quest is completed and they make it back to the hamlet alive. Which brings me to the next point. The game is hard, and doesn't give a fuck if you're having fun or not, as you can go from the thrill of victory to the crushing agony of defeat in a single turn. The game gives no quarter when it comes to going on a quest ill-prepared, and if you don't realize that a mission is lost and abandon it quickly, you will lose party members left and right. This was probably the biggest hump for me to get over early on. The thought of failure, anathema to my what I think about in progressing in quest-based RPGs. It was after this point, when I began playing it safe, that I began to slowly become more successful on these quests. And being successful in a quest will truly make it worth your while, as you come back with a large amount of gold, as well as other items, including those which will help you upgrade your hamlet to prepare your adventurers for more dangerous quests.
One and the same.
The town itself is also where you go to relieve the stress for all your adventurers, and you have several ways to do so, from prayer in the church to indulging in gambling, booze, and pleasures of the flesh. But all of these do cost you your hard-earned gold. Luckily, the quest rewards also allow you to upgrade these facilities to treat more adventurers and for less cost. The town also allows you to cure any negative ailments your party may have gained while on their sojourn, including the most modern medicine, such as leeches and a trip to the sanitarium. Lastly, the town also allows you to upgrade the skills and equipment of your adventurers themselves, which is vital if you hope to make it through some of the longer quests. And when you finally do decide to take on one of the bosses in the game, you definitely need to be at your best, as they have a ton of HP and generally have several actions every round, which can make things go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and things quickly shift from bad to worse in a single
More
round.
dust.
But oh man, the audible shout of joy I had when I landed a killing blow on something, one of those bosses, was something everyone, I believe, should experience.
This
In
is
the
no
end,
place for the
Darkest
weak
Dungeon is
or
something I believe
foolhardy.
absolutely everyone should play. And the fact that this game is only in early access
not
on
the end
Steam
of things.
and feels very much like a finished title just makes me excited to see what the developers have in store for us before the game is officially released to the world.
A victory.
This is John from the
That's a
Infinite
turning
Lives
point.
podcast, and I'll see you as soon as I overcome my
Well
Dacnomania. So that was Darkest Dungeon, everybody. Dan,
Yep.
what'd you think?
What I really like about Darkest Dungeon is how polished it seems, even though it's an early access game. Like
Definitely.
this is really one of those games that it's not really an early access game.
It's pretty much. I mean, it's the released version of a game, but they're going to be adding more content.
They're going to be
it.
adding more content, but it looks like they're only adding the actual Darkest Dungeon.
Yes,
And they're
I think
changing
there's one,
some
Yeah, they're changing some stuff around.
some gameplay stuff, but it feels like a really complete
Yeah.
game. And what's really cool about it is how balanced it all feels. It feels like there's kind of a counter to everything, and even when you're kind of really out of luck and you're just having a really bad run, it kind of feels like it's a little bit of your fault, and
Oh, yeah.
something that you can kind of get better at.
And they're constantly patching that game.
Yeah.
I mean, the cool thing I like about these devs is that they're active on Twitter. And they're really active with the community. So like I tweeted out some stuff about like how much I had fun with the game. Like when I beat the first boss, I tweeted about it, and they favorited it and retweeted it. And I'm like, that's cool. These guys are really engaged.
Yeah, they're definitely engaged.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this actually ends up as a final release.
The art style is really good.
It is really good. The voice acting in it's really good. Like I love the quips that come along just like randomly throughout while you're
that is
adventuring
true.
through a dungeon. Like when you hit like a really super solid hit on a guy, and like the narrator comes in and he's like, "Oh, a very powerful hit," and you're like, "Yeah, that wasn't it?"
Kind of reminds me of Mortal Kombat a little bit.
Yeah, or like when you get hit really hard with like a critical and he goes
Yeah.
bending, about to break, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, things are going bad."
Definitely.
But it feels like a guy like narrating like a super cool like fantasy action style movie. Just the things that come in.
So what's your worst experience in Darkest Dungeon?
Worst experience was when I had an entire party wipe. So that was before I learned the value of getting the hell out of there. I read that like 3-4 days afterward. If you things start to go bad in that game, just abandon the mission. That's the one thing, if I can tell you, that I did not learn for the first like 2 or 3 playthroughs on it is if things go bad, just let it go. That mission's not going to work. Get out of there. Make sure your people survive. You won't get any gold or anything from it, but you should be able to use them on another adventure. And I believe they still they get some experience for it, if I remember correctly.
You get some gold.
Yeah, and you get some gold. You get whatever you found, but not the main quest gold. So
What party do you like to use?
I like a couple different parties, actually.
Yeah.
I am a fan of you gotta have a Vestal. So first things first, bring a Vestal on every quest, no matter what.
And upgrade that heal.
Yeah, get that heal upgraded ASAP. The single target heal. The group heal does not worth it.
I like the group heal.
Group heal's fine, but you can only get like 2, max of 2 to
You
start.
just have them heal all the time. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyways, I like the Vestal. I usually have either a Jester or a Plague Doctor as my second from the back, and then a Crusader or a Bounty Hunter, and then a Hellion or a Leper. So, but you can also do crazy stuff like people used to do in the old original Final Fantasy game, where it's like, I'm going to send a whole party of Red Mages into run through the entire game, or I'm going to have a whole party of Vestals. We're going to run through this dungeon.
Yeah.
I've seen people doing stuff like that.
Yeah, one time I had a glut of like adventurers, so I took 2 highwaymen and 2 of the jesters, and I was just like, whoever survives this day,
Gonna get some XP.
yeah,
gonna
you guys,
get some,
yeah,
some
you,
promotions.
yeah, you get some promotions, some upgrades. Like I don't care who survives. So bottom line, would you recommend that to anybody?
You've got to be ready to fail in this game. You've got to accept that that's going to be something that's going to happen. If you're not willing to do that, you might want to give it a second thought. Maybe pick it up when it's on sale and give it a try. But just from the state of the art direction, the voice acting, the gameplay itself, this is a must-buy for anybody who likes like a good, solid like RPG style game.
Turn-based RPG.
Turn-based RPG. Yeah, not a lot of those out there.
Yeah.
And don't get too stressed out. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Dan and I are probably going to go play some more games and cut some more videos together and talk about them here. Thanks for watching the first episode of Downloadable Content. Say goodbye, Dan.
Boom, shalaka-laga.